What is up, everyone? Just a minute, I'm just figuring things out while things are getting connected. Okay, excellent. Now we are live. Let's get started. So, we were discussing several important points in one of the previous videos on how you choose computer science as a career, either for yourself or maybe some person in the next generation, your nephew, your kids, your niece, and so on. So, what it requires for people to be taking a career in computer science. Now, there was one part that I mentioned. I'm not sure how many of you watched that. A lot of people think that, hey, this child or myself, we should be extremely good at mathematics. So let's get to this slide. We were discussing, no, it is not important that one has to be good at mathematics. If you are an individual, to be good at computer science, you need to be good at logical thinking. It just so happens that logical thinking is one of the prerequisites to be good at mathematics. But there is a notion of math out there. Say, for example, if you remember your 11th standard and 12th standard syllabus, there are different chapters like calculus, conic sections, and I think linear programming and algebra are still part of computer science because they come under logic. There are still, I believe, fields. I'm not sure what is related to fields. Let me quickly check that. Fields in mathematics. So this is an extremely interesting subject within mathematics. Additions of, okay, these are all rational numbers, algebraic function fields. On number theory, a lot of aspect of mathematics which we generally do not need to know if you want to become good at computer science. Say, for example, this is a very interesting subject, complex numbers. I believe complex numbers are very essential in case you are planning to do electrical engineering as a career, take it up, or even mechanical engineering. But I'm not sure how much it came in my syllabus when I did my computer science engineering at NIT Trichy. This was 16 years ago, 16 to 18 years ago. No, I'm getting the numbers wrong. Now it's 24. I passed out in 2012. So 12 to 15 years ago. I don't remember going very deep into conic sections except for my first year where conic sections or complex numbers and triple integration and so on in mathematics. There was in my first year at college, all of us had common subjects. All the engineering students shared the same syllabus for our first year. The remaining 3 years, we took up individual subjects. We even had electives. Say, for example, computer science and engineering. I don't think a lot of these advanced mathematics was part of the curriculum or was necessary, and in my last 12 years in the industry, I don't think I have ever applied cyclic groups. Groups and fields were some terms that I was looking for. These are not concepts that we ever encounter, and those who are put off by mathematics, I think unnecessarily get distracted by getting put off from computer science as well. So there is some amount of logical thinking as I have explained over here. Now, there was one more extremely important subject that you had to be good at if you want to be good at computer science. This is something that I felt was English. Because I think this is a famous quote by George Carlin that we covered in the slide. Over here, here is the quote. We think in language. The quality of our thoughts and ideas can only be good as the quality of our language. So if you are someone who is getting into computer science, your most likely career will be a software developer if you come into the industry, where it is all to do with problem solving. If you want to simplify it, it is similar to word problems in your mathematics way back in, I don't know exactly when, 4th standard, 5th standard. Now, a lot of kids struggle with word problems. I don't think it has anything to do with the underlying math involved. Say, for example, addition or multiplication or division. It is interpreting the word problem and applying it in the formula, knowing what the input is and where they fit into the equation and then solving that equation. This sort of hey, I will take this word problem, translate it into mathematics, apply it in a formula and come up with that result. That bridge was broken for a lot of students. I fundamentally believe this was due to aversion in for a language like English. Oh, I'll just be mediocre at English, let me not fully get involved. I'm not talking about advanced English. You don't have to be familiar with advanced concepts. Even like basic concepts, some of them are not important. As long as you are able to interpret information and get the right information, absorb and come up with the right set of thinking and communicate it back to the outside world. It could be your English exam paper or to other human beings. As long as you are good at communication. Communication is not just one way, right? Communication is not just absorbing whatever others tell us. It is absorbing, processing it, filtering it, coming up with our own set of thoughts, augmenting the original thought that was being done. Hey, this seems right. No, I would try. This seems incorrect. I will push back. That processing, logical thinking is needed. Then how do you put it across? This is where a lot of people struggle. And I believe this stunts a lot of people when they get into computer science. I believe English plays a very important role, especially in the modern world where a lot of businesses interact in English. I think globalization cannot be reversed. So whichever country you are part of, even though you might be having another first language, other mother tongue, I think English is pretty dominant, which necessitates that you get good at English. Of course, in countries like China and Japan, they code in Chinese and Japanese, but still, if you want to get to good, whichever country you are, having good fundamental grasp on communication, especially English, is something that very important, is my personal belief. More important maybe than some fundamental mathematics. I think everyone who passes school, who finishes school, knows the fundamental of math, but so many people who even finish college, even post-graduation, they struggle to communicate. This stunts their growth as a developer, as a software engineer. So to become good at computer science, my first recommendation is to become good at English. In case you are figuring out what you should be doing to improve in English, there are two strategies that I would go about it. I think one is the passive strategy. Okay, I'll watch a lot of movies, I'll watch series, I'll get good at it. Unfortunately, that doesn't put your English communication to test. You need to be good at communicating. You don't have to be an expert, you don't have to be a champion speaker, you don't have to be engaging. As long as you're able to communicate the thoughts in your head clearly and crisply, I think communication so passive communication, I don't think is that valuable. You can absorb a lot of things by watching movies and TV shows, but I don't think that puts our verbal communication to test, or even our written communication. Both verbal and written communication in English is very important in career. Now, what about active, getting good at communication in an active manner, less than not doing this passive approach where you have very less growth? The active approach forces you to get out there and become better. Over here also there are two kinds of approaches within the active approach. I believe it is worth it even if you are an adult. It is not too late. You can join an English course, a communication course. Go out there. I don't think they take more than a month. Probably 2 weeks to 4 weeks is all it takes for you to improve your communication skill. That is excellent investment in yourself. If you get better at communicating, avoiding some common communication mistakes, a lot of politics, office politics happens due to miscommunication, how we put it across with our colleagues, with our boss and other things, right? Which is why I feel it is totally okay to go join an English speaking course and a written course to get better, to improve in your career as a software developer. Also for someone who feels, okay, I know the fundamentals, but I'm not able to apply it in practice. I still feel I have faults, I have issues in communication. An environment where I'm able to slowly improve my communication, especially my verbal speaking skills, is a group called Toastmasters. You can figure out Toastmasters is a non-profit organization that is globally there in about 150 countries. I think all the countries that are out there, at least democratic countries. It is headquartered in the US, but you have something called as clubs. Clubs usually comprise of about 20 people. You can go join a club in your geography, in your city. Say for example, I'm from Chennai. Chennai has more than 100 clubs. Many of them are corporate clubs, but there are community clubs. I believe more than at least 20 community clubs within Chennai, of which I can go become a member of. I can also go attend as a guest. Now, what they do in Toastmasters to improve communication is, if you become a member, there is a clear path for you. You do some projects where you introduce yourself, get good at body language, vocal variety, avoiding filler words. I still use a lot of filler words. I've been trying to actively, it is my nature to speak in a manner. I try to change myself gradually over the longer period of time. Some filler words that I use are and so. These three words I use a lot when speaking in between. Toastmasters, when I keep going regularly, attending different club meetings, it helps me improve. Thank you, Rajan, for that feedback. Now, as I been getting back to the original point, getting good at English, getting good at communication can help you think better as a developer. This is a very important prerequisite. As I told in Toastmasters, not only you have to become a member, even if you go as a guest, you are called to give 1 or 2 minute speeches where you try to overcome some things like stage fear, connect with the topic that is given. All you have to speak is for maximum 2 to 2.5 minutes. So, then you start speaking for longer speeches, 7 minutes. There are some speeches that are 20 minutes. Then you start getting opportunities to give education sessions where you might be having some interesting thoughts or you would have learned something. The best way to learn something and fully internalize is to teach others, right? So these education session opportunities are also available in Toastmasters, where you go share your knowledge with other clubs. Again, as software developers, irrespective of the career point that we are in, all of us have our own strengths. You could be an excellent front-end developer, back-end developer, mobile developer. You could be familiar with a framework. The best way to gain reputation in the industry is to share your knowledge about it. So this concept of education session in Toastmasters gives me good practice to go talk about technology in the real world. I'm able to apply these skills. People also correct me in a very friendly and easy manner. I never get discouraged. If at all I miss some Toastmasters meetings, it is due to other commitments. I'm not in town, I'm traveling, I'm busy that day. So I try to go visit other clubs during the week. I also, at a few months ago, I was attending 4 meetings a week because it was fun. That environment I previously discussed in the live stream. When you have fun, learning becomes much easier, right? The people are very positive over there. Okay, enough about Toastmasters in general. You can find self-help groups like Toastmasters and other communities where you can grow your communication skill. I believe communication is very fundamental. Not only in many jobs, especially in computer science and engineering or software development, especially in career. I'm not very familiar with academia, how much communication plays a role. It might be more to do with yielding to hierarchy and so on. I'm not very familiar. Again, when it comes to the software development industry, again, that is my forte. I can very well say you can be a mediocre software developer, but if you can communicate really well, you are more valued, your career path will be much rated, much faster. So English, I believe, is very underrated. A lot of people avoid this. Now, moving on. This is one thing that I wanted to discuss. Yeah, before moving on, now communication is a skill, right? You could be at whichever level you are at communication. I'm just using communication as an example. It could be anything else. It could be familiarity with a framework, familiarity with a programming language. The first time we learn something, we have theoretical knowledge. We are not able to answer questions, advanced questions, start thinking in that language or framework to solve problems. So for that, we need to put in some reps. We need to get better at it, start applying these skills. Just watching YouTube videos or reading books alone does not guarantee that you will become better as a programmer. You need to start applying. Similarly, in communication also, as I previously mentioned, you could be watching a lot of English videos, but if you are not speaking well, you are not putting that skill to test. So only by doing a lot of repetitions, I believe you will find that secret sauce. So what does it take for me to jump from something like level 1 to level 2? There must be some secret over here, right? Just a second. My point is, I am doing something very repetitively. I'm ready to put in as many reps as needed. but I want to jump from level 1 to level 2 and the level n, so on. It could be any skill that you have. It could be communication, programming, familiarity with the language, familiarity with the framework, as I was mentioning. Now, I believe the secret is very personal. A lot of people will give you advice. A lot of people will talk from their own personal experience. Hey, do this, do that. Some of the advice, unfortunately, they'll talk about two opposites. Their suggestions will be conflicting. You will not know which one to apply. I believe the secret, being very personal, it's very subjective. You do not know. You will figure it out when you put in more reps. When at some point of time, it could be just few days, few hours, or it could be months or years. Any skill, I believe, for you to grow from level 1 to level 2 and level n, so on, there is this point where things click in your head. The jigsaw puzzle just fits, right? That point, it's very hard to articulate. Even if others come and if you go and tell someone point blank, this is how I did it, the other person cannot fully absorb. It is experiential learning. Unfortunately, bookish knowledge only goes so far. Verbally listening to someone only goes so far. When we actually do things, build things, get our hands dirty and get deeply involved, that is when I feel we learn a lot of information about ourselves. The knowledge could be out there. There is even a saying, the teacher arrives when the student is ready. The teacher again is not necessarily a literal figure. It could be figurative. Sometimes all it takes for us to move from level 1 to level 2 is putting in a lot of reps. If you have exercised at the gym, you would notice, say you start at a given weight or whichever exercise you are doing. But the best way to increase your weights is to get comfortable with the current set of weights. At some point, someday you will feel like, hey, I'm actually good at this. I'm able to do these exercises effortlessly. So that's when you will know, you will find that secret. The secret could be either mental or physical. In the gym, it is mostly physical, but a lot of skills, soft skills, even core skills, these skills, when they are especially mental, you will figure out that point of time. No one can predict it. I don't think it is time based. Now, going back deep into myself, I'd like to talk about my history for a while. There are some skills involved. One is the familiarity with programming itself, your if conditions, while loops, for loops, switch cases, basics of a programming, right? You could start with the programming language. My first programming language was way back when I was in 6th standard at school. I was taught a language called QBasic. Then in 8th standard, I became familiar with the basics of C. Again, no advanced concepts of C. Then my next learning in, I was familiar with HTML. I believe a lot of school students are asked to build websites, at least way back in 2006 when I was doing my, am I getting that right? Yes, 2006 when I was doing my 10th standard, I got familiar with HTML, CSS and JavaScript. Whatever version of HTML was over there. So by getting familiar with few languages, I came to know the general concept of programming. Now my knowledge of programming in 6th standard was different from my knowledge of programming in 8th standard, just 2 years apart. But then I had put in enough reps, I was able to transition from level 1 to level 2. It could be that programming has 1000 levels and level 1 to level 2 is very insignificant, but still I felt I had upgraded my knowledge by at least being good enough at QBasic, whatever I was supposed to do at school. Now I'm not only going to talk about programming. This is programming languages. Then at college I became familiar with the concept of imperative procedural languages, object-oriented languages. Then in my career I became familiar with functional programming languages. I have been using a functional programming language Elixir for the last 5 years in a production environment so far. That enables me to think differently. I have moved past levels, but I am still putting in the reps. This concept I believe is important. Now, I did not know at which point I will transition from one level to the other. That secret is very subjective. But one thing I regret, even though externally looking at myself, it might be that things were easy. I feel things were difficult and I should have put in a lot more hard work. Even though things were difficult, I got discouraged. I took the easy path. I was ignoring a lot of things, especially at college when I had a lot of time and energy. I felt I could have done a lot more, put in a lot more reps. But again, we do not know. Regret. I don't exactly remember what I was undergoing a decade and a half ago. But still, I feel if I had put in some more reps, some more practice, getting good at the skill, today I would be better. Now, I'm not talking about it in pure terms of regret or nostalgia. I'm using that lesson to apply to myself today. I'm 34 years old now. I don't want to regret again when I'm 50 years old. Hey, I could have started doing all of these when I was 34, which is what I'm trying to correct. There could be several skills that I'm just mediocre at. And looking back, I don't want to regret that, hey, I stayed mediocre throughout my entire career. I want to get better at it, which is why this whole concept of doing this live, getting better, trying to move from the current level that I am on to the next level. Now, it could be other skills, not just thinking of programming and programming language concepts. It could be touch typing, increasing my words per minute, decreasing my error rate, how quickly I type. Now, it could be about problem solving. A lot of time you don't, if you are a software developer, you don't necessarily go and type before the computer whenever you are given a problem. You take a step back, you think mentally when you're walking, when you're on your way to the workplace. That is when answers strike you. This aspect of problem solving can be improved if your fundamentals are strong. Now, what are some fundamentals? It could be general logic, how the logic skills that you are born with, but you can also learn skills. The most common being familiarity with data structures and algorithms that improve your problem solving skills. You will be able to identify patterns. Hey, this problem involves usage of this data structure and this algorithm. Again, this is something I was solving lead code problems 13-14 years ago, especially for a job opportunity point of view. I got placed in the first Indian company that was offering. I wanted to work from India, so I was very happy with the outcome. But that is when my problem solving skills, I believe, have been more or less stagnant from my knowledge from data structures and algorithms point of view. I have never had the reason to upgrade my data structures and algorithm skills, or just put in more reps. I need not upgrade, go from level 1 to level 2. Maybe I should just put in more reps for me to upgrade. I believe I have just taken the easy path of choosing career opportunities where this problem solving skill is not put to test more. It's like more of writing code where problem is already solved. You just have to implement those problems. So I want to get better at it. I want to take up more responsibility, feel more responsible. I believe I'm already doing that, but whatever I'm doing, I want to become better than what I'm already doing. So this problem solving skills is something that I want to work on again, and wherever I want to improve better. Then there's this familiarity. Usually when you hire people, if they are good at programming, I don't think people ask for typing skills, but you have to be good at programming and problem solving. But then what differentiates a junior developer from a experienced developer is familiarity with the ecosystem, some libraries, some tools, some frameworks, a linter, your unit testing framework, your deployment solution, how you do it. All those things, familiarity with the ecosystem plays an important role. It might not be asked in your interviews, but in your day job to be productive, familiarity with that ecosystem, I believe, is extremely important. Now, again, this is something I believe that I'm good enough, but I want to be better. So these are the skills that I want to improve over a period of time. I believe if I'm improving, most of the people who are watching these, I'm not very sure of the demography of people, whether you are younger or older, but I believe you have what it takes to start again today and improve yourself wherever you are today, to go from the current level you are in. If you are at level N, can you upgrade yourself to level N plus 1? That is the entire point of what I am trying to tell over here. Now, I'll be discussing the programming aspect of it later. Let us get into typing. Now, when it comes to typing, when you get started in your school days, college, then your entire career until you retire, maybe even after you retire, I believe typing, today is a modern world, typing is one of the most important skills. So there is this aspect of looking at your keyboard, looking at each keystroke and typing using a single finger, using multiple fingers. But then you can get extremely fast by not looking at your keyboard at all. You don't context switch back and forth between your monitor and the keyboard. If you can just look at the monitor or even look elsewhere and type, you just type based on the fingers that you have. Sunken FRC, I'll probably get back to you later. Thank you, Rajan, for that constant encouragement and feedback. in the comments. Now, typing is something that in today's modern world, I believe handwriting, there used to be a word for it, not calligraphy. There used to be a word for handwriting where you improve in your handwriting, it improves your career sort of. It's a good skill to acquire. That has been replaced with typing. You are going to send out emails, you are going to type a lot of code. So when you are spending in so much time doing that activity throughout your day, you could be typing for 4 hours a day, you multiply it by 200 days a year, or maybe in your free time also you are typing a lot. If you are not good enough at touch typing, you are going to lose out a lot of time, and your context switching between the monitor and the keyboard also makes it difficult for you to be in a state of flow. I have always mentioned that the state of flow is a desired state where you are free from distraction, you are deeply immersed in a problem, and you are just able to come up with a solution. The way I put it is, the amount of input, if it gets translated to output directly, 1:1 ratio. Usually you put in a lot of input to get very little output in life. It is more like 10:1 or 100:1. But in a state of flow, it is 1:1. Which means I just put in 5 minutes thinking, I'm able to get 5 minutes worth of code outside. Whatever it is, I'm not going into lines of code or what problem it solves. The state of flow is something that we want to be in. One of the difficulties to attain state of flow itself is context switching between the monitor and the keyboard. So you need to be really good. You need to invest that time upfront. I think touch typing is a mandatory skill if you want to be an excellent programmer. If you just want to be a mediocre programmer, I'm not going to get into details. So this, you should see this as an investment upfront and not see it as a waste of time. Again, my recommendation is not to push yourself throughout a weekend or a given month or so and get good at touch typing. I started with touch typing when I was at college, second year, which was 13-14 years ago. That is when I came to know about the concept of touch typing. All my classmates, we were competing. I think even with touch typing, I was only able to hit 30 or 40 words per minute. But then I have taken different points in my career to spend time improving my typing skills. Now I am consistently able to hit 70 plus words a minute. I want to get better, but I'm just telling you, it's not a single iteration where you stay satisfied with the level you are. You just keep putting in more reps, you take breaks, and then you figure out what is the secret for you to move to the next level. Say for example, how did I go from 30 to 70? I took a video recording of my fingers. I moved that even though I was doing touch typing, my fingers were not hitting the right set of keys. My palms were moving out around a lot. I was not on the home row strictly. Again, we'll walk through some concepts. I believe I'm at level 2 now. I want to go to level 3 in terms of touch typing. I want to put in the reps. Again, we'll go through some resources. The resources where I believe you should start at for touch typing is Typing Club. If you search online for Typing Club, you will get this typingclub.com, but when you actually log in, it will redirect you to ed8club.com. So I am already logged in over here. These are the lessons. There are, I believe, 270 lessons or so. No, was it? Okay, it is not 270, it's 685 lessons, which can be overwhelming, which is why I keep telling don't take it up in one single stretch. My recommendation, if you are not a touch typist before, you can spend 1 or 2 lessons a day. So let us actually get familiar with what this website looks like. Let us get started. I have heard good reviews about this, but I have not done it myself. I don't want to take the placement stress. I want to do the grind. Start from lesson 1. Let's see where that goes.
So, I hear you want to type like a pro. Let's start by setting up your finger positioning. Look at the F and J keys on your keyboard. Do you see the bumps on each key? Close your eyes and feel for the bumps using your 2 index fingers. Take your time, but don't look. Did you get it? Your index fingers should always find their way back to F and J by feeling for those bumps. Now curve your fingers and bring your other fingers down on the next 3 keys on either side. This is called the home row position. For example, to type the letter U, your right index finger will travel up 1 key and then quickly return to the bump on the J key.
So it is very important to stay on the home row, and even if you are in a dark environment, you do not have backlit keyboard and all, whenever you place your fingers on the keyboard, your index finger should immediately start searching for the two bumps, the left bump on F, your left index finger, and the right index finger on the J. Then you can start typing even in the dark. So these bumps are a guide for you, similar to like how in Braille you have bumps where you can quickly position your fingers and start reading. These are not that complicated, but very quickly you can find out in the dark, even if you have no if you are not able to view the keyboard, even if you have the vision is obstructed away from the keyboard, you are in the dark, or the keyboard is away from you, you are not able to look at it, you should be able to place your fingers at least on the home row and the next consecutive set of fingers on either side. So your left index finger, unfortunately I have not set up my camera for this, your left, I think they'll demonstrate over here in this video. Your forefinger should be on ASDF, left four fingers all the way from your little pinky to the index finger, and then JKL semicolon.
Okay, before we start, there is only one rule you must always follow. Never, ever look at the keyboard while typing. If you follow this rule, your index fingers will quickly learn to find their way home by feeling for the bumps. Fast typists forget about the keyboard and don't even realize their fingers are at work. They feel one with the computer. After some practice, you'll start feeling it too. The computer becomes a part of your body and your mind is in full control. Let's get started.
So very important not to look at the keyboard, also not to move your fingers away from the home row. So let us get started. FJ. Excellent. How do I continue? Okay, I press enter. FFF. So as you can see, very simple. You just start with two keys, your index finger, which is usually the most powerful finger you have while typing, except for your thumbs. So I think this is now going to talk about space. Yeah, space with your right thumb. So you can see it alerts very clearly if you're typing the wrong key, which key you are pressing also is there. Will it stop at some point? So I'll share the, I'll show the URL again. It is edclub.com, but you can search for typing club. Unfortunately, I'm still not comfortable pasting the URL. I'm live streaming on multiple platforms. So if you search edclub.com/typing club or just www.typingclub.com is an excellent website where you can get started learning how to touch type. So it gives you badges, it motivates you, the entire gamification I believe is good. It also tracks what speed and all. Now introduction of the next set of keys. Yeah, I believe it will cover the home row. Now we'll practice D and K. I like the auditory signal that the website provides. So free edition, free trial, I'm not sure what it actually add. Free, more games, story typing, more reports, replay attempts, more themes. I'm not sure I want it right now, but if the premium plan is for you, I definitely recommend you take it up. It doesn't seem very costly. I'm again typing J instead of F. So that is getting familiar with 4 keystrokes. This is something that let me go back and see. Okay, you have games as well, which is nice. This ensures you type at a regular pace and not get distracted. So it might look that the website was built for children, the entire gamification aspect of it, but I still feel I have not been able to find a better resource to start touch typing. So you can find different resources. Let me see, did I actually make any progress? Does it count my progress over here? Okay, it shows that I finished 8 lessons already. So 600 should not be difficult. Maybe finishing entire sections in a given day is something that is possible by you. If you get stuck, my recommendation is to go back and repeat that section. Then you can get good at it. This is something that I'll be trying in my free time, figuring out where, say for example, I thought I'll make 0 mistakes being the experienced typist that I am, but I've been making a lot of mistakes. Something to look back, introspect and get good at. This is something that I'll definitely use. So the next resource that I would like to talk about is KeyBR. I'll close this typing club. KeyBR is another website. If you get good enough at typing, it gives you phrases, letters for you to practice. It's more of like a level 2 exercise. Okay, what is data points? Need more samples? Okay, I'll show. So it learns from your mistakes, tells you what you're good at, bad at, what speed you type. So it introduces few letters at a time. So if you are not very comfortable doing just the exercises from the previous website typing club, this keybr.com, it's called typing practice. Again, I'll show the URL. It's, as you can see, www.keybr.com. So definitely this is something that I'll recommend. The whole point is to have lots of fun. Once you get started, I've noticed my family, whoever has been trying, they start enjoying these. I'm also reminded of the typewriting classes. Yes, I believe these websites do a good enough job that you don't need to go back to these typewriting classes. You can just, at the comfort of your home, you can just open a laptop or sit in front of your personal computer and just comfortably keep practicing day by day. You will definitely, as you keep putting in the more reps, that repetitions that I've been talking about, you will suddenly discover the secret. Oh, I'm able to transition, increase my words per minute. I'll just do one more exercise because I'm finding it fun. What am I doing wrong? I think the entire page got refreshed because I pressed an incorrect key on my keyboard. So as you can see, it focuses on a very small subset of letters. It doesn't cover the entire keyboard. If you can see over here, it introduces each key one by one. E is probably the most common. So like that, it is adding more and more keys for me to get better at, and it also shows my words per minute, accuracy score, etc. I'm not sure what else it provides. It provides some typing tests, multiplayer and all, but I have not used this extensively. Again, I'm planning to put in more reps. I'll come back to this again and again regularly whenever I feel like it and enjoy this. My recommendation is to not start with this regularly. My recommendation is to go to typing club, get familiar with some basics, then come to this website. So this was getting familiar with Y. As you can see, each letter keeps getting unlocked. It shows you the words per minute for each character, which is quite interesting. Then the third website that I would like to talk about, these two are sort of at similar level, TypeRacer and Monkey Type. Both these websites are good enough for both beginners and professionals. It doesn't teach you how to get better, it just shows, gives you games to play and test your typing skills. TypeRacer is something that has been there for I believe more than 15 years or so. I've been playing that game since college. I'll show what TypeRacer looks like. You get into a contest, a typing race. You get quotes, quotations from books or movies, and if you can see, the text is also with a lot of punctuation. You get that commas, single quotes, etc. So you can't type incorrectly. It forces you to go figure out your mistakes. This view of cars racing against each other is super fun for me. They have not changed the core UI for the last 15 years, which I enjoy. So it shows you words per minute. You can create an account. It can once again, I don't think I've signed in. I don't remember my password. Probably next time I'll sign in and I'll show my history over several years, how my typing speed has improved. Then the last website that I would like to talk about is Monkey Type, which is over here. These 4 resources are good enough for you to have fun at Monkey Type. So Monkey Type, the best part is you can customize a lot of things. I use a theme called the terminal. You can choose different themes depending on your mood, your favorites. Say for example, I'm gone with a green theme in my browser on the left. So let me choose a similar green theme to fit in. I like this bouquet theme that I just saw. Where was bouquet? Yep, here it is. So it looks nice. Over here, you can go choose these themes on the bottom right. It will also tell you which version of Monkey Type you are in. You can log in, it will keep counting. It shows me I am at level 15. These points keep adding. Over here you can see you can have different race types. You can either do by seconds countdown, 15 seconds, 30 seconds, 60 seconds, 120 seconds, or by words, how many words you type. I have done 166 texts. I think I created the account only last week, as you can see from the date, just less than 10 days ago. It shows your profile of these are all mistakes that you make, I believe. How many mistakes you make. Again, I am not a power user of Monkey Type, but I absolutely love the minimalist UI and the color schemes that Monkey Type provides. So I'm going to choose a time-based test for 30 seconds. The good part about Monkey Type is it starts counting only when the first character is typed. Oops, I just switched on some other shortcut. That's okay. So as you can see over here, this huge dip, I was not typing at all. So that affected my entire average. There are 3 color schemes. One is the background. Then there is foreground color, as you can see, depending on the theme that you choose. Let me choose a more easier color. Okay, as you can see, the background is more like dark gray, bluish dark gray. You can see a light colored gray over here. This light colored gray graph shows the most accurate last second typing speed. So when I did not type for a few seconds over here, it went down all the way to 0. The red shows the average from the starting point of time. So I started at around 108 words per minute. I was sustaining at around 89. But at this point, when I stopped typing, when my instantaneous typing speed dropped down to 0, my overall average from 90 it dropped all the way to 60 because I was not typing for a few seconds. This is how one would interpret the data. You can see crosses over here that show the mistakes that you make. Again, both TypeRacer and Monkey Type are super fun websites. I recommend that you get started, figure out where you are, what is the typing speed that you have, how many mistakes you make. Then you can go join typing club, create a free account, then do typing practice. I think this covers more or less all the resources that I have. I think taking up more websites and trying them out will be overkill. Your typing is just a skill. That skill is on the list of several skills that you need to have. Getting distracted is also something that you want to avoid. You just want to spend something like maximum 15 minutes to half an hour a day, not more than that, because then it becomes a distraction by itself. So that is about what I wanted to cover about typing and why typing is very important. I've already covered that earlier. Please see that as an investment. Now, one very important aspect over here, if you are a software developer, is the concept of a PDE. You might be familiar with this concept called IDE or Integrated Development Environment. There is a concept called the PDE, which is very useful if you are going to be in the career of a software developer. If you are just experimenting here and there, you are in an associated field, but you just are going to write some minor programs here and there, you don't have to invest the time in a PDE. So what is a PDE? Instead of me articulating, we have someone more experienced who is none other than TJ DeVries. I recommend that you go follow him on YouTube. Excellent videos, high quality videos. Definitely you will learn a lot by following him. He is a core contributor to neovim. He also live streams. I follow both his streams and YouTube videos. So let us look what he has to say about PDEs.
Hey YouTube, it's me, TJ DeVries, here to talk about a term that I hope can sort of answer this question that I often get, which is basically, why would you use neovim? Right? And the answer actually does.
So neovim is an editor. It is better than Notepad. If you are familiar with Eclipse, NetBeans, IntelliJ, it is somewhat like that, but not exactly like that. But it's not as bad as Notepad. So he's one of the software developers maintaining neovim. So when people ask him about neovim, he wants to explain the concept of a PDE.
Doesn't necessarily revolve exclusively around neovim. I think it actually revolves more broadly around this term that I want to call PDE. PDE stands for Personalized Development Environment. Today I'll explain both what I mean by that term, and hopefully it sort of gives some new clarity between text editor and IDE, as well as show a few things about why neovim is a good candidate for being a PDE. So I hope you enjoy this talk. If you have questions, concerns, anything like that, leave them in the comments. You know what to do. Thanks everybody. Let's get to it. So let's give a little context first. This term PDE first occurred to me when people were asking me, do I think neovim is a text editor or do I think it's an IDE? And my answer was basically, I don't think that it's either of them. When I think of a text editor, I think of something that is exclusively focused on editing text, which I don't think neovim's exclusive focus is on that. We ship with an LSP, we have tree sitter, we have some things that are beyond just the literal editing mechanics of moving text around, right?
So if you are a software developer, you'll know. You just don't type text. If you are not a software developer, it might not be very obvious to you, but I'll talk about my experience. When you are writing code, you need a lot of tools in place for you to write code better. Say for example, one of the concept is called a variable. You can think of variables in terms of your math algebra. You can say x equal to 10. So when I say x plus 1, what is the result that I am expecting? I expect 11, right? So x equal to 10 is called the definition. Now wherever I'm doing x plus 1, I might not do it in the next line. I might do it 100 lines later. X plus 1, print x plus 1, so that output saying 11 comes on the screen. So if I'm 100 lines below, I'll not be able to see where x is in my editor. My monitor is not long enough unless I'm using a vertical monitor. In my normal horizontal monitor with default resolution, the way we do things, I may not see where the definition of x is. There is a code that says x plus 1, but I don't know where x is. You can, your modern editors, IDEs, and even neovim, you might want a shortcut that says I either do a command click or a control click on X. It should go all the way to the line where X is defined, or some keyboard shortcut. In neovim it's GD, go to definition. So your cursor will immediately go 100 lines above and show you where X is. This is not something that is available in Notepad or Notepad++, right? Over there you have to press up arrow 100 times or scroll or do page up or go to line or something like that. You don't have the smart jumping from where X is being used to X is where X is being defined. These are a set of tools that neovim provides. So he's saying neovim is not definitely a pure text editor. A pure text editor will not have such tools.
But it's also not an IDE. You don't open it up and it doesn't start like indexing your projects or doing anything like that for you. It still requires you to do things. So when people ask me that question, I can understand why they would be confused, because
so in an IDE, normally when you download, you will see all these graphical elements. Okay, that IDE is walking through all the files, trying to understand the code, so that when you do some sophisticated actions, it can jump to the right location where you want it to go. So these are some things that you might not notice if you're using a tool like neovim.
Because when they open neovim, it sure looks just like it's only a text editor, right? You can't do anything exciting by default, cryptic menus, etc., etc. I think some of those things are maybe overblown, but that's beside the point, right? And you can see how someone who opens that up is going to think, this is useless. People do this just for gimmicks. But on the other...
So this is very important. I believe TJ has a different take. I have pre-watched these videos for me to find out what is the... on the right, you can see I have a playlist of videos that I want to play on my stream. But what I'd like to say is, as human beings, we don't necessarily think logically all the time, right? We are emotional. So it is perfectly fine if you go pick and use tools to just show off. Maybe you just want to get better at touch typing just to show off in front of your friends that you can type fast. That emotional motivation might be the push that you need for you to go invest time and effort into that skill. So even though he says that it is perceived as a gimmick, it is not really a gimmick, I am of the opinion it is okay even if it is a gimmick. You start using them, figuring out whether they actually make your life better, more productive. Then if it does not, then you should just probably abandon them.
On the other hand, after you've used neovim for a while, I think, wow, I have a lot of features in here, and I'm going to show some of those later. And so I think this spectrum really doesn't answer the question of, one, why would you use neovim, and two, what can you do with it, right? And I want to show you both of those things. So first off, let's define the term then. If PDE is not a text editor or an IDE, what is it? So I would say the first defining feature of what a personalized development environment is that you must have some assembly required.
So this is not assembly the language, this is the verb assembling. You bring pieces together, you assemble them together and figure out what works for you. Now this is purely, I believe all these videos that I am going to play and talk about is purely from a software development point of view. In case you are a non-developer, if you are looking into things like neovim, I am not very familiar. Maybe you can find tools, you can customize, you can make things better. Say for example, you are coming from a data science background, you want to run some things. I am not sure where neovim actually fits in. I am talking about it only from purely a front end, back end and any other commonly understood software developer point of view. So he clearly says the first requirement is, if you are using a PDE, maybe things are not there out of the box. You just need to figure out your different tools, plugins from different sources and assemble them as needed. This can be quite intimidating to a lot of people.
Now, immediately, this is going to turn some people off, and they're not going to be interested in doing that. And to that, I say, that's great. It turns out the software development world is big enough for people to have different opinions, different desires, different definitions of fun. That's okay. But I want it to be clear, the first thing in my sort of definition of what a PDE is that you're going to have to do some work on your own. That's the personalization part. And that can come in a variety of different factors, which we'll show. Additionally, a PDE must have the ability to support the coding basics, right? So And by this, I just mean you're not opening up notepad.exe, right? It has syntax highlighting, it's got folding, it's got indentation. It's not writing in Notepad, it's not writing in Google Docs, for example, right? So that's definitely a bare minimum requirement for a PDE. But that is also shared with, I think, most text editors. But beyond that, it also needs to have something that I like to call code intelligence, which by that I just mean it understands the code as more than just text or the bytes on the screen, right? So perhaps it's integrated with LSP, right? So that you could get completions or go to definition or find references. These things are more than just grep, right?
So for those who are not familiar, one of the reasons Vim or VI used to not be that good a decade ago, there was this difficulty of shipping plugins. I'm using a new language. Say for example, I want to start writing in Elixir. It was very difficult to find a well-maintained Elixir plugin for Vim or Emacs. Now this entire concept, I believe it's covered in a different video, we'll play that. This entire language server protocol or language service provider, not protocol. So language service provider, where is it? Wow, why do I get protocol? Okay, maybe I was right the first time. So over here, this concept I believe came out a decade ago in 2016 by Microsoft. Internally they collaborated with Red Hat and CodeNV. The idea is I build one protocol for one language and all modern editors support this protocol. Suddenly I get support across editors for a given language, which was tremendous. I think this LSP was a game changer in the ecosystem, which meant we could go back and use editors like Vim, or more specifically neovim, that started supporting LSP, which was the difficulty 15 years ago when I abandoned Vim as a full-time editor. I could not find a lot of programming languages and tooling. Now with the rise and adoption and the maturity of LSPs, I think it is great that we can start using these. So this code intelligence using LSP, language server protocol, is a game changer over here.
A useful tool, and I use a lot, right? But it needs to be more than just that. It needs to understand the text at some sort of semantic level. That semantic level can vary and may not be as semantically understood as something like Java and IntelliJ, right? I think there's very few tools that understand code as well as IntelliJ for Java, right?
So IntelliJ, for those who are not familiar, is an IDE built by JetBrains. I believe the source code of IntelliJ, no, I'm loading a recently opened link. So if you're a Java developer, you might be familiar with IntelliJ, at least the community edition. You may not use the ultimate edition. If you're a C# developer, you might be familiar with the Visual Studio. So these are full-fledged IDEs that provide you a lot of deep integration. A lot of advanced concepts of Java I learned because I was using IntelliJ. I could not understand by looking at YouTube videos or the website references, but in IntelliJ, the UX was fantastic. I was able to learn some concepts and implement them in IntelliJ. So that level of deep integration is generally very difficult.
But it needs to know something, and LSP is a pretty good standard. That's what neovim has, and it's been working great for me. Beyond that, though, there's two unique aspects for PDEs that I think are also part of this requirement, which is that PDEs provide a playground for you to compose a bunch of tools together. Now, the composition is very important. So in neovim, for example, right, this means that we might use something like ripgrep within neovim to be able to generate.
So for those who are not familiar, grep is a tool that helps you search. Ripgrep recursively searches directories. Line-oriented search tool that recursively searches the current directory for a regex pattern, regular expression pattern. Ripgrep will respect git ignore rules and automatically skip hidden files and directories. So it is slightly smarter. So ripgrep is very commonly used by a lot of software developers. Assume you are already familiar with the ripgrep from the command line. What if you want to bring it within your editor? That is the point that he's trying to make. I want to build on top of ripgrep. I just want to do some shortcut or pass in some default arguments to ripgrep automatically based on different set of flags, different set of shortcuts that I type in my editor, and something like in neovim it will be normal mode. I switch to normal mode, press some shortcuts. Can I have ripgrep up and working? That is composition. Composition is you build things on top of each other and you leverage the underlying parts.
A list of references to this string, right? Okay, that's very cool. We don't rewrite grep to use it inside of Vim, right? We compose other tools in sort of the Unix style to be able to do those things.
So I am reminded of a question one of my previous bosses asked me. He asked me, do you know why grep is called grep? So I thought about it for a while. I gave up. I remember reading about it a long ago. I think it has, again I forgot. I believe it is globally recursive expression parser or something like that. Let's see what it is. What is grep? Command line utility, regular expression, global regular expression search and print. So grep is this G stands for global. This is regular expression and print, which has the same effect. So when was it developed? Initial release was 50 years ago in November 1973. Unfortunately, still a lot of developers don't use grep. They search for their file explorer, the Control E in Windows or in Mac, or Finder search to discover files in their system. So grep is something, even though since it has been available, all these Unix based tools, it has not penetrated the non-developer community. It's still confined to the developer community, which is quite sad. I think we should do a better job of marketing our tools and products to non-developers as well. Let's go back to the video.
Things together. Even LSP, in a sense, is a composition of a tool, right? Because for neovim, you can just get the references of something under your cursor and you could display those in a variety of different ways. You could pipe them through Telescope, or you could put them in the quick fix list, or all these different things.
So the point that he's trying to make is, I gave an example earlier, right? I have defined x equal to 10, then I am doing x plus 1 some 100 lines below. I have called the x equal to 10 line as the definition of x, where the x is being assigned the value of 10, and you can call about, you can think about the x plus 1 lines, you can call them as references or usages. So what if I want to find all the usages or all the reference where x is being called or invoked, and then show them in a separate window? What if I have a modal window on top of my editor? I believe a search window, one of the tools is Telescope in neovim that shows all your search results in a modal window. Then he also talks about a quick fix list, which I believe is when you add to-dos, you can find in a project what are all the to-dos there and you can go fix them. That is my guess. I have not used a quick fix list before. So what if we want to find all references in a Telescope view or in a quick fix view? Can you do that? That is what a PDE should be able to provide.
Right. Each of those things is an example of composing different tools together to provide an experience that's greater than the sum of its parts, right? But beyond that, a PDE...
So the experience greater than sum of its parts, I usually have a graph for this. This is it. So when you keep adding more and more, suddenly your developer experience keeps getting better and better. It is not a linear curve. It is, do I have a linear curve over here? Okay. Let us not pollute this. Let me create a new document. So generally, we might assume, let us take my pen tool. We might assume a lot of things in life are a straight line, linear progress. More time I spend on it. 1 second, I'll just change the colors so that it's easily visible. Yep. So a lot of times we think life is like this, where I put in more effort, I keep progressing linearly, but you never know whether it is diminishing returns, where more effort you put, the growth is not so much, or you have increasing returns, where the more effort you put, suddenly you keep getting exponentially better. So this is something that we do not know unless we try things out. We assume things are linear. So when something is better than the sum of its parts, I believe it is this curve, where the value that is being offered is not linear anymore. It increases exponentially. As more time passes or more effort you put in, you get exponential returns.
PDE must be scriptable and extensible by the end user, and not just sort of as a thing that exists, but I would say for a thing to be a PDE, it is required that the majority of users do some scripting and or extending of the editor themselves. For Vim, this is really obvious that people do this all the time, because your vimrc or your init.vim, that's just scripting, right, as part of.
So neovim is based on Vim, which was in turn based on VI. So Vim, a lot of developers use some default initialization files which Vim loads from. These are your initialization scripts or vimrc. He says that anyway, a lot of developers do these
of your configuration, but that part of it is where personalization starts to come in. And I think the Vim way and the Emacs way too of sort of these scripting as just part of your regular configuration is that step that you need to get to more advanced scripting within the editor. I don't consider something like IntelliJ to be scriptable, because I don't think the majority of users write their own extension, for example.
So IntelliJ, NetBeans, Eclipse provide these concept of plugins and extensions. You can customize, you can download a lot of them, but do a majority of developers do it. Say for example, when I got started, I have never even installed a plugin. I have been using the defaults. It took me months for me to start searching for plugins for my own use case. But if you are a Vim or an Emacs user, to even get your indentation, your spacing, all those things, formatting, people rely on going and editing their vimrc files. These initialization scripts that sets the rules for your editor to behave, for it to even have good defaults. So even though that's a negative, it is more like, if you think about it, it's a steeper learning curve. But then at some point you are now qualified to start writing your own plugins. But I could be using IntelliJ for a decade, but still the first time I tried to read the source code of a plugin that I wanted to modify, it was very difficult for me to understand. There was a lot of learning that I had to do to take that source code, modify it, and repackage that plugin and use it for myself, for my own needs. It was quite difficult. It was not part of the default flow of using IntelliJ. But for example, in using Vim, it so happens that most developers, the default flow is like that. That helps you skill up. So yeah, you now learn the fundamentals, the basics, for you to start customizing the editor for how you want. So that, he believes, is an important requirement for PDEs.
Right, within IntelliJ. So that scriptability is also that scripting is ubiquitous among users. However, there is one more requirement that I sort of think is essential when we think about PDEs, and that requirement is that you're having fun. When you're configuring, when you're learning new stuff, when you're trying to write your own plugin, when you're exploring new key combinations, that should be fun for you. If it's not fun, I sort of refer back to some assembly required. Perhaps PDEs just aren't your style. And that's not a dig. That's not saying you're not as good of a dev or anything like that. A bunch of devs that I super respect and I think ship amazing products that do great businesses, they use the default thing for Sublime. They don't spend any time configuring their editor, and they don't think that that's any fun. And they make fun of me for spending my weekends doing that instead of launching a new business. And that's okay. But I don't picture that as sort of like an alternative. For me, doing things with my editor, exploring it, doing those things, it's like a playground for writing interesting code that I find useful. I get to write code for a customer who I know pretty well. And so for me, it's an opportunity to learn more about API design, to think about performance in different settings. For all these different aspects, I'm having fun doing that. And that's not for everyone, and that's okay. But I do think it...
So this is the most important point. you might be, I definitely did not have fun a decade ago when I was trying to configure. It was more of frustration than fun. That was also due to lack of quality resources like TJ's YouTube channel now, the Primogen's channel. I'm someone who doesn't like to read the friendly manual. It's very dry and difficult for me. Even TJ has a live stream where he walks through the the manual for neovim over 9 hours. You can find that video if you search on YouTube. But I am someone who likes this more engaging manner of trying to absorb information in a more friendly content, absorbing the content in a more friendly manner, rather than reading from books or reference material and resources. So it was not fun back then, but it is fun for me now with all these resources available. At the point of from introspecting and self-learning, the point at which I felt where I was not having fun is when I spend an extraordinary amount of time trying to fix something, but all that effort goes to waste. That is when I feel, oh my god, I spent a week trying to fix this, but I still have not made progress. That is something where I kept getting repeatedly stuck on a decade and a half ago. It was one, due to lack of resources. Number two, also due to lack of understanding on my part. I do not know if I have grown tremendously as a software developer in the last 10 to 15 years, but still I believe I have improved at least a little bit. So the way I look at things now is very different from way I look at things in my mid 30s is very different from how I looked at in my late teens. So that difference, that mental maturity itself makes a lot of difference. I don't get frustrated that easily anymore. I'm able to persist. I'm able to bring in a lot of different context. I don't look at things in the one particular manner. So I'm able to have fun right now. So it is very subjective. It could be you as an individual. You might not be having fun doing neovim. Maybe you want to stick to a Windows environment and neovim on, I don't even know whether neovim works on Windows. Maybe it is not fun for you to dual boot or have a secondary device or switch to Ubuntu or any other Linux distro. It completely is subjective, not only on you as an individual, also the time period in your life when you want to experiment and get deeper into such things. But I do genuinely believe that when you have fun, you're able to move faster. You're also able to go longer. You don't get burnt out that quickly when you're having fun. This is something that I covered earlier. I'll also briefly be mentioning the two requirements I believe that are very important. Why don't I do it now itself? Yes, this is the one. The two most important traits for software developers, in addition to your core skills and communication, those parts I have covered earlier, is to have fun and to be building things. If you're just consuming information all the time and not building, you will never grow, because these two will internally build your internal drive for you to go build and do things, work on open source projects, build side projects and all those things. And thereby you'll get better technically, you'll improve your communication skills, you'll understand what it takes to get a side project up and running, you'll develop business understanding, and that will lead to you doing better at your day job, which will lead to better business success and indirectly leading to fulfillment. So this have fun and building things, for both of these a PD is extremely important. Let me actually put it over here. I believe these are the reasons why I find using a personalized development environment like neovim is very valuable. If you are already using an IDE, if you all you just want to do is get familiar with the shortcuts, get familiar with the different settings configuration, and if that provides you happiness and fulfillment, and if you find that fun, my suggestion is to definitely do it. You will definitely improve as a software developer. I'm not recommending everyone, like how TJ is saying. The same point I have is not everyone should switch to neovim or start using neovim. Whatever tool you use, if you are able to use it better, if you are able to configure it better, as software developers, it is easier to configure something like neovim better, faster than configuring something like IntelliJ, which is one of the reasons I've been paying IntelliJ a subscription fee year over year for several years. But 2023 or 24 is when I actually stopped my subscription, moved to VS Code. In VS Code, I was doing Vim motions. We'll cover all those things, what Vim motions are. Then by using Vim motions, I was able to finally transition to neovim. Let us get back to the video.
It is sort of one of the requirements of this whole PDE experience, and where a big disconnect happens for a lot of people, because they think that doesn't look fun to me. And I would say, yes, that's okay. It doesn't have to look fun to you for it to be fun for me, right? I hope that that's clear and what I'm saying makes sense, because it's okay for someone else to have fun in a way that you don't think is fun. And that's part of this PDE thing. Beyond that,
This is extremely important because you don't want people. This is unfortunately that is something that happened over decades. It has been happening. Personally, also I've encountered it. When you push something hard, when you sell something hard, when you pitch something very hard, sometimes it can be off-putting. It's called coming across too hard. So when you do that, when you say neovim is the best thing on earth, then people treat you with suspicion. You alienate a lot of people. So my recommendation is let people have their own variety of fun. You figure out what gives fun for you. I have figured out that over the last several months that working in neovim is fun for me, and I hope I can mildly influence you. It is definitely okay to mildly influence, but I'm not going to force you to neovim or start using neovim. I think that will only push you further away from neovim.
I'm going to take this time to do a separate rant, because for me it's important to recognize I don't think that making an argument that PDEs are faster is a good argument. And notice that I didn't say anything about speed or loading times or anything else like that in any of the requirements that I've said so far, because I think most of those arguments are pretty worthless.
So this is something that kids who want to be cool use a lot. They say, oh, this tool that I'm using is faster. I think that is subjective. That is to do with your previous exposure. I was pretty fast with IntelliJ. I was using a plugin that will teach me to use shortcuts in case I use mouse activities to do something. So I was good enough at IntelliJ and VS Code, but I become even faster in neovim. But I was faster than the rest of some peers that I knew who were on an objective manner. I was able to get things done in VS Code and IntelliJ faster than what they were able to do in Vim. So you see the point that I'm trying to make. Faster is not something that he also says, please do not use that as a metric to evaluate tools or when you pitch tools to others.
One of the main reasons that I think that is if you're not having fun, if you're not enjoying the assembly required, you will be really slow in your editor because you're not going to master it for PDEs, right? And then you will stay stuck there and you will not enjoy coding or do other things that allow you to improve your speed. And so you'll end up just saying like, oh, I used Vim for 2 years and it sucked and now I switched to something else.
So this getting stuck is our visualization over here. This getting stuck, you're stuck at a level, your speed is not improving, you are not able to find the secret that enables you to move on to the next level.
Right, you're not going to get any faster. Whereas for me, when I look at my editor, I'm interested in getting 1% better every day because I'm having fun. And so over 5 years, I might be at a spot where I'd be faster if I was using something else. That's true, right? I might be faster than even if I was using IntelliJ for that whole time or something, right? And trying to master.
So the thing about learning curves, say for example, where is our recent curve diagram? Let us take linear curves themselves. You might be saying, hey, the current tool that I am starting off over here. But if your rate of, that was an exaggeration, I'm starting slightly over here. But if your rate of growth is not that good, if it is more or less stagnant, am I using the right tool? Yes. If it is stagnant, then there will be a point where someone else or you yourself, when you are using at this point, if you had been using a tool that makes it fun where you keep getting better over a period of time, the starting point that does not really matter. So if you're in the software industry for just a year or two, definitely use the quickest tool that makes you don't spend the time investing. It's not worth it. But you might be thinking of, hey, I'm just going to be working as a software developer for a couple of years, then I'm going to go do my MBA and move into management. Definitely my suggestion is it's a waste of time if you're spending all this effort investing in resources. But if you think of software development as a full-time career, like how I did for myself, even if you have tools that don't give you immediate benefits in the beginning, if they do make it fun for you and help you get better in the longer run, definitely you should pick them, because over a period of time this compounds, right? You get much better in your career over a longer period of time rather than having an head start but not growing as fast as you want to.
After that. So ultimately, I think speed or ability to do things in a particular tool is personal and personality dependent. So I don't think it makes sense to tell other people,
you would be faster if you were using Vim.
What kind of stupid thing is that? maybe they wouldn't. Maybe they wouldn't be having any fun. Whenever people ask, should I use neovim on stream, I ask them, do you enjoy tinkering with things? Do you have fun spending time exploring? If you do, you might like that. But if what you want to do is sit down and code and get your company shipped quickly, why would you take a detour to do neovim? That doesn't make any sense at all. So I can't answer that question for you. That's part of things being personalized. So that's the end of my little side rant. Please, if you're a fan of neovim, don't try and make neovim's faster arguments. Just say why you like it and let other people decide for themselves. Anyways, let's go ahead and move on. Let's see if neovim can meet the requirements that I've laid out to be a PDE. The first thing is, of course, neovim can do all of the basic things that people expect from a text editor, right? Which is, it can do syntax highlighting, folding, movements, all this good stuff, right? It can do all those. And I don't think anyone, even the actually crowd, has anything to say about whether neovim can or can't do that. It can do all of those things. That's great. So that's sort of a check on basics, right? But let's move on to something more interesting, thinking about how does neovim try and tackle the ideas of scriptability and extensibility. The first thing is that neovim ships with its own API. This API is very robust and is getting added to more and more over time. And it allows you as a user to be able to control neovim over a remote protocol or via Lua. In this case, it does something very simple. It takes the current buffer and it sets all the lines to the lines, first line and second line. This API has a lot.
So you might be losing a little bit of track over here. I'll try to simplify it in case you are not familiar. If you are using IntelliJ, you have to write code in Java. You have to follow build step, packaging, and publish, import it. Similarly, in VS Code, you have to write some TypeScript code. You can configure things in a JSON file if you want to, and then import it and all. There is probably a similar step. This is the build and deployment process, but there is also the actual code that you write, right? This different languages have their own strengths. I'm not denigrating any of the other IDEs, but over here, what he's trying to explain over here is, hey, my API for configuring neovim is so simple. The code aspect, not about the packaging, deployment, all this aspect. What it does is, I just do vim.api, neovim.set buffer set lines. What that means is, a buffer is like a file. A file is stored in your hard disk, in your SSD or HDD. But when you edit a file, it's loaded into the RAM, the main memory. So you don't want to call that still as a file. There are associated terms like file descriptor and all these things, which makes it confusing. So the wording that is used, I don't know what the etymology of this is it's called the buffer. So a buffer is nothing but a file that is loaded in memory. That is what you edit. Whenever you do Ctrl S or similar shortcuts in other editors, so when you save it, it gets saved back into the disk. Now what I'm doing is neovim buffer set lines. So there are some values that you pass over your first line, last line. I don't know what the third flag is. Something. It will actually go and set your current files first and second line like this. Which if you configure, if you say, okay, when I press some series of shortcuts like ABC, whenever I type ABC, that means my current file will just have these two lines, first line, second line, automatically there in my file. So all it takes is, as you can see, just 2 or 3 lines for me to set my current file and modify it based on a series of shortcuts. The shortcut part of it is not being discussed here. It will be discussed in a later video. So he's trying to emphasize the simplicity of the API. You just have Vim API, neovim buffer set lines that will override or it will append. I'm not sure whether it will append or override. It will set the values in your current buffer. And this API being very straightforward to read and write makes it very easy for you to customize your own plugins, set up things as ever you want. Again, maybe other IDs also do a good enough job as neovim does.
A lot of contracts and guarantees that make it really useful over the long term for users and exposes a lot of consistency of neovim internals. This allows us to do a lot of exciting things like Luify sort of every aspect of the user experience within neovim. So that means settings, key maps, commands, auto commands, and more as time goes on. This idea of the scripting is configuration and configuration is scripting, while not perfect for every scenario, at least gives you some of the idea about how, as you start to understand, how do I do settings? You're like, oh, when I learn how to do that for my personal configuration, I also learn how to do that for plugins or for more advanced scenarios, right? So each one is...
So you don't have to follow these along. They'll be explained in later videos. It's okay if these parts are going over the top for you.
Sort of like a building block on top of this universal API within Lua. Beyond that, though, we have powerful tools exposed via Lua, like Tree Sitter. So Tree Sitter is generally sort of known as this thing that does syntax highlighting, but Tree Sitter does a lot more than just highlights. What it does is it's a library for writing grammars to basically expose syntax trees in a unified format, which...
So again, Tree Sitter is something that's probably overkill right now when you are getting introduced to PDEs, but definitely we have a video here by same TJ who will explain Tree Sitter in more details. It's not the same as LSP. We spoke about LSP some time ago. Your language server protocol that gives you go to definition and similar functionality. Tree Sitter is more specific to a file. It is, if you are familiar with programming languages, it's something to do on the parser side of things for a given file. It does not have smart references across multiple files and all those things. It's more like a grammar, an advanced form of regular expressions, but more on top of your tree rather than your flat text file.
Lets you understand the code structurally. And so why don't I show you a few examples of some cool stuff we can do with Tree Sitter inside of neovim. So the first thing that I want to show you is an example of how we can use Tree Sitter to generate snippets. And so in this case, what we're going to do is, and this is a bit overly complicated, but I just want to show you that it's not sort of hocus pocus. It really does actually do something quite interesting, which is in Go, it's common that you need to call some function, and if that function returns an error, you return the error and then defaults for everything else of whatever function you're inside of. And so in this case, basically, I've got a function here, and I want to call example function down here, okay? And so if I wanted to do that, and I wanted to handle whether I had an error or not from example function, I can take this snippet here, and I could say value is the value that I have, error is the new error that I'm calling. I can move to the next one and say example function. And then notice how inside of here, I've generated the corresponding sort of defaults for, or the zero values for whatever types are within the return type of the current function that I'm in. So note that I'm actually in like main, and then I'm in another anonymous function inside of anonymous function, right? So this actually uses Tree Sitter to determine, hey, what are the things being returned by whatever the nearest function scope that I'm in, and then return the default values for those as part of the snippet. And I can jump through these, and I can even switch to say whether I want that wrapped or not, depending on what error library we're using at the time. And then
so as you can see, it's not just blind find and just add code, replace code. It does it smartly because it's able to understand the int, error, string, int, return type of this inner anonymous function, and by just typing few lines of code, he's able to get that return type, which is an excellent boilerplate starting point for him to start configuring it. So this sort of customization is where the PDE aspect of it is. He's personalizing it for himself. Definitely when he shares it, it might be relevant for people like other developers like me as well.
I can move through that and continue going. Now, that's a snippet that I wrote for myself, and it queries Tree Sitter to understand what's happening sort of at a structural level. And we can actually take a look to see that this tree that's built inside of neovim actually understands a bunch of what's happening with this code, and I can ask what the result of this function is. That's how I get each.
So for if you're not familiar, when you write, if you're not familiar with programming language theory, when you write programming, a lot of code is for the ease of use of a human being. It undergoes several translations. One of the important steps is the step called where you get the output called an AST or an abstract syntax tree. If you just do this TS playground toggle in Tree Sitter, when you install Tree Sitter plugin in neovim and run this command TS playground toggle, for the current buffer that is open or the current file that is loaded in memory, when that is open in your editor, it'll show a view on the right where it's just showing the AST form of it, and when your cursor hovers over this, it shows the line of code in your actual code where it shows. You can even query it, run some modifications and all those things, which we'll cover in a later video. So having the AST quickly accessible in your editor makes everything dramatically powerful.
Each of these different types to make my own snippet. That's just an example of how when we can start composing the API, the sort of unified language built on top of the API and tree sitter, we can start to do very exciting things. So that's just...
So as I mentioned, not only you learn one skill, not only you just figure out how to introduce snippets, you also need to learn about types. Say for example, you might just be familiar with Go, but how are types defined in Go? How do I identify different types in Go? All that knowledge is needed for you to build a simple plugin. If you're willing to spend the time upfront and build your own set of snippets, not only do you get the snippet as an output, you also get the knowledge of deeper understanding of types in Go, which is the entire point of a personalized development environment. You just don't look at coding from a surface level point of view. You develop a deeper understanding, which is very valuable if you look at your career in a very long-term point of view.
One example of tree sitter. It can do many more things. It can do things like expanded selection based on scopes. It can do highlighting, all the highlighting that's provided here. It can determine when you should indent. It can determine folding. It can actually determine sort of the context of the current function that you're in. It can do many, many more things. But I just wanted to show you at least one very interesting one. Let's move on to the next thing. So the next thing that I wanted to show you is just a really brief introduction to LSP within neovim.
So there are two concepts. One is tree sitter, the another is LSP. Both are similar, but they are very different. Again, will be covered in a later video. Now he's going to talk about LSP, which is true deep understanding of a programming language.
Knows much more than just the text, right? So if you're familiar with LSP, some of these things won't really surprise you, but I do want to at least show them and show what's possible. So some stuff that we can do with LSP is we can request, hey, I'd like to get all of the workspace symbols, fuzzy find over those, and move to the one that matches. That part's pretty cool. We can also ask for the references of that. And that is also piped through Telescope, which is...
Okay, this is something that I have still not figured out. I want LSP references in my Telescope search results. I'll want to investigate and find the references. I'm not sure if it comes in my Telescope window. It comes probably somewhere else in my IDE. I'll definitely check that out.
It's a fuzzy finder that I helped write. And it's quite cool because we can move between those very quickly and easily between the different references. Not only that, we also get information back from the LSP about things that you might want to do for this particular file. So for example, we can run the current test by typing run, and we can run it. We can see that, this test passed and it ran successfully. We can then move to the next one to show that this one fails, right? By running the same thing again, and run this test and show, oh, this time it said that we would get 6, but we got 5. And so that's an example of how we can run those tests as well within the editor, and we're doing that basically through LSP and code lenses. So that gives us power to understand the text also at a more intelligent level, and to do the kinds of things that you'd expect from an IDE. Go to definition. We can rename things to call this example, right? Even though we could rename this to be X, and then notice how we have the same X up here and down here, the same name, but they're not the same variable. If I rename this back to say NVim is cool, of course, a good name. Notice that we didn't rename this X, right? LSP understands that those X's are in different scopes, and so when we rename one, we shouldn't rename the other. This works across files as long as the LSP supports that as well. And LSPs are progressively getting better and better over time, which is very cool to see. And that's sort of just the basics, just scratching the surface of what's possible to do with neovim. And what I think is the best part about it is that I can't tell you what you are going to find fun or interesting to do. That's part of this whole idea of having it be a personalized development environment. I write snippets that I find useful for me. I write shortcuts that are useful for me. I write even plugins that I find are useful for me. Some people happen to share some of the same things, and then we might end up collaborating or doing different things together to make it even better, which is awesome, and that's sort of in the spirit of open source, and I've learned a lot from that, sort of with neovim as the testing ground of that for me. But ultimately, I'm not here to convince you that neovim's awesome and great. What I really want to try and convince you is that this term PDE is at least useful for people to think about and to sort of grow in our understanding and conversations about text editors or development environments in general. And so ultimately, my goal was to expose you to the new term, to make you maybe think in a new way, and I hope that I was able to make that happen. If you liked this talk or you'd like to see more of them, let me know in the comments. If you have any questions about how I did anything that I did, I will try and write other talks about that. And coming soon will be a talk about how you can make neovim into an IDE really quickly as sort of a base ground to start building your own PDE for neovim. Thanks everybody. I really appreciate you watching the video all the way through. And if you could, smash that like button, give it a subscribe, and let your friends know. I hope PDE becomes a term that allows us all to have a little bit more clarity when we're talking to other people, and a little way to remind ourselves that, hey, everyone's an individual and we can love and respect each other. Thanks. I will see you all later.
An excellent take on why we should respect our individualism and figure out what we want to. Now, going back, one of the important reasons why people don't end up customizing their own development environment or set up their own PD is something like neovim expects you to be good at touch typing, expects you to be familiar with a lot of keystrokes, not look at the keyboard. If I'm going to do a colon, W, Q, Shift V, all the shortcuts, then it's going to be nightmarishly slow. So a lot of junior software developers or students at college or school want to get good at Vim, want to set up neovim, appear cool in front of others, perfectly fine reasons. I'm not going to judge based on those. But the reason that they are not able to progress is they are not good enough at touch typing already. You need to be good at touch typing if you want to set up neovim as your PD. That is something in TJ himself has mentioned in his live stream. I've heard Primogen also mention that it is a given. It's very obvious that you need to be good at touch typing, which is one of the reasons people sort of give up. You ask, generally one of the reasons for success is that delayed gratification, which I've mentioned in one of my previous videos. A lot of people want instant gratifications. They want quick results. They are not willing to spend the time upfront, invest in themselves, their own skills, resources, energy, effort. I understand people also have different life circumstances, different upbringing, but one of the quickest ways to succeed is investing in yourself and practicing delayed gratification, knowing that the success is out there, you will definitely reach it. So if you want to be very fast in your terminal, get things done very quickly, not just quickly, have fun while doing it, as TJ importantly mentioned, and also have confidence in doing whatever you are doing. One of the biggest things why I have been using Vim over a long period of my career is I don't want to install extra software if I'm making some configurations on the server. Say for example, my web server Nginx that I'm using, I don't want to necessarily use a pipeline to modify it. Some places I might have, but I might just want to quickly go make some changes on the server, so save the file and restart. For that I still use Vim. So as I've been using Vim to make such modifications all these years, it makes sense to invest in some basic things related to Vim, like Vim motions. I don't have to install neovim, that's probably overkill on the server, but at least being familiar with Vim motions and shortcuts is definitely extremely valuable. Again, all these things add up over a period of time. I am able to move, I believe I'm in somewhere in the 50th percentile. There are people who are 10x, 100x better than me, but I am also 10x better than a huge set of population. One of the reasons why that is possible is I've been investing all this time upfront. So if you want to be that good, please get good at touch typing, then figure out what your PD is. Only then you'll become, you'll move forward. Now, before we move on to the next session, there are concepts like we'll walk into how setting up neovim is. If you're a non-developer who is watching the stream, this is now probably the time where I go transition more into a pure software development, more coding point of view. Thank you for watching all along. Now I'll also be taking a quick break, but before that, over here
What's
how
up,
do you
YouTube?
set up a neovim on your own? TJ is going to talk about setting up neovim. I believe he uses a different configuration. What I use is lazywim. This is something that I like. I have extremely good defaults. I want a particular color scheme. I found it very comfortable. Lazywim is something that I set up. Again, for lazywim, these are the requirements. If you are using lazywim, this might take a while. You can also take this time right now if you're either watching it on live stream or watching this video later. My recommendation is you either pause this. I'll be taking a break for a few minutes and then be coming back. You can watch, you can set all of this up. You need FD, rip grep. Also, the default terminal in GNOME terminal did not work according to the expectation that I had. I had to set up Kitty and all those things. I have set up some in Mac, but since my Ubuntu is my primary development environment, I'll quickly switch to that as well. As you can see, this is my config envim where I have different plugin setup. I generally like naming them as it is. So I'll just be quickly back. My recommendation is please set up lazywim. We'll also watch how TJ sets it up. You can also pause this and come back later. When I'm back later, I'll notify. Thank you so much for watching until now. I'll just be back. So I didn't realize that it was getting this late. I'm yet to have dinner. So I'll be ending the stream now. Probably I'll resume where we left off, setting up neovim, lazywim, all those things in a later stream. Thanks for watching. See you until then. Bye bye.